living fully alive in every way. You're listening to Relationship Prescriptions with Dr. Carol.
It's Dr. Carol, and thank you again for joining us on Relationship Prescriptions. It is wonderful to come to you each week, and I pray that these episodes give you encouragement and insight into challenges that you may be facing. I have a friend with me today that I am so excited to bring to you. Elisha Dorsett is a frequent worship leader at Celebration Church here in Georgetown, Texas, where I worship. She's also a music teacher here at Summit Christian Academy in Cedar Park, Texas. Yes. Thanks for being here on the program.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Well, we could talk about a lot of things, I know. But in our current climate in this country, issues of life and choice and women's reproduction and so on are just so hot. Mm-hmm. You have been through 2 pregnancies, both of them with challenges. Yes. And I think that would really be wonderful to talk about. First of all, what are your children's names? How old are they?
Okay. So I actually have 3 children. My first pregnancy and the third pregnancy are the ones that we'll discuss today. Mm-hmm. But my oldest child, his name is Dylan, and he is 21 years old, almost 22 next month.
A man.
Yes, he is. I have a man child, and he is an absolute blessing. He also works here at Summit as a football coach. He's in school, not to do coaching. He's in school for political science. Just an amazing kid, loves the Lord. I have a son who is 18. His name is Noah. And though his pregnancy did not bring any challenges, he certainly brought a share of challenges, but of course, every child is a blessing from the Lord, and he has been a blessing in my life too. And then finally, I have a daughter who is almost 16. She reminds me of that every single day.
16 is going to be a big deal for her.
Yes, it is a big deal, and she's excited. We get to celebrate her birthday in California this year, so she's excited about that. But she's 15 years old. Her name is McKaylin. We gave her the most difficult name on the planet before we knew that she is diagnosed with Down syndrome. She is a joy and a blessing in our lives. She is hilarious and makes us laugh every single day. So,
wow, Elisha. Let's start with Dylan.
Sure.
Now, he is 21.
Yes.
You're not.
I'm not
old enough. A whole lot older than that.
I always say I should have sold skincare because I always get, you don't look old enough to have a 21-year-old son. And most of the time I just say, oh, thank you so much. But truthfully, I'm not old enough, though the Lord saw differently. So I got pregnant with Dylan in high school. I was raised in a Christian home. I was raised with parents who are believers. Raised in a home where they did the best that they could with what they knew.
Yes.
And, was even raised in Christian school. I had some things early on in my life that kind of opened my mind up to things that I wasn't ready to be exposed to yet.
Sure.
I had a lot of times you see girls that are involved in sexual activity at a young age went through some sort of molestation in their life, and that was the case for me.
Yes.
And so by the age of 14, I was sexually involved with a boy, and by the age of 15, I was pregnant. And, it's interesting because on the outside, everybody just looked at our family and said, you have it all together.
Yes.
I used to say we were like Leave It to Beaver almost. The only problem was I felt like Eddie Haskell. I felt like I was the one who didn't fit because inside I had this turmoil that was happening.
Right.
On the outside, I was able to put a mask on and pretend really well. But I was struggling with this sexual sin and struggling with sexual temptation. That, of course, my brain just didn't know how to process the things that had happened to me. And so I was reacting and acting out.
Sure. And at 14, you don't have the wherewithal to do that. And although you're still relatively young, even just when you were growing up, there wasn't as much understanding about awareness of the kind of trauma that you had been through.
Definitely. My parents, of course, again, they did the best that they could with what they knew. I had told my parents by the time that I was, I believe, 12 about what had happened in my life. And, of course, they did the best that they could. But also, I don't know if this is still the case. It certainly wasn't the case with my own children. But growing up, the topic of sex was a very hush-hush topic.
Yes.
We didn't talk about that.
Oh, yes.
It was kind of like this idea that if you didn't talk about it, it just wouldn't happen, right? Or maybe the hope. And so a lot of the information that I had was from friends.
Yeah.
And so, I found myself pregnant at 15 years old. At the time, I was desperate and scared and thought my parents are perfect. And if they find out, they're going to kill me.
Wow.
Like literally just as a 15-year-old
Sure.
mindset.
Right.
I was raised in the house of if you did not say yes to him, yes, sir, you might go get a spanking, and so
Right.
very strict household, but very loving household. And so I knew that I needed help. Well, I reached out to a friend, and that friend did not know what to do. And so she happened to work with my mother's best friend at the time.
Wow.
And said, I have a friend who's in a predicament and needs your help. And that friend, I still love her to this day. Her name is Dina, and she's a blessing in my life. She called me at 15 years old. This is before cell phones. So the landline rings, and I jumped on it really quick because I thought it would be my friend with an answer to all my problems.
Right.
And this beautiful woman said, Elisha, I know that you're pregnant, and you have 10 minutes to tell your mother or I will. And so I walked into my mom's bedroom, and it was just this serene, beautiful picture of my mom sitting there, and she's got her Better Homes and Gardens magazine open, and beautiful beds. Everything was perfect, and I'm about to shatter her world. And I said, Mom, I need to tell you something. And I'm crying, and she said, oh, what's... And she's trying to guess. And finally I said, Mom, it's worse than anything you could think. And I said, I think I'm pregnant. Of course, my mother had a little bit of a conniption. I've never heard my mom say a bad word in her life. I'm pretty sure she said a few that day.
Yes.
And so to make a very long story short, after a few days of doing nothing but crying and just wishing that I could crawl in a hole and never come out, because I thought, for one, I just didn't know what the future was going to hold. Well, at that time, the boy that I was involved with, his mother had some ideas of what we needed to do, and so did the world. They had some ideas of what we needed to do. Abortion was the obvious answer for a 15-year-old who was pregnant and had her whole life ahead of her. That's what the world said. Little did I know that my mom that night would crawl into my bed at 3 a.m. and she said, Elisha, are you still awake? And I said, of course I'm still awake. And she said, I need to share something with you. And here's my mom, who I thought is the most perfect, beautiful woman on the planet. She said, before your father and I got married, I got pregnant, and we chose abortion. And to this day, that decision haunts me. And I've struggled with suicidal thoughts, and I've struggled with depression, and you will not walk this road, and we will choose life.
Wow.
And that was her answer to me. And I will tell you, Carol, it wasn't I'm scared. Immediately I was relieved.
Yes.
I was relieved that, okay, my mom, my rock, has an answer for me, and she has a safe place, and maybe she's not as perfect as I thought. And suddenly we had an answer. Now, we didn't know adoption or keeping, or we didn't know any of those answers. We didn't need to know those answers yet. But we did know we're choosing life.
You're choosing life.
And at that moment it made sense, because I could remember walking in on my mom and seeing her at the point of suicide.
Wow.
I remember my dad rushing home from work. I remember times like that and not knowing why and wondering what was wrong. And then it made sense.
I just got to pause here, Elisha. You have just in the last few minutes talked about traumas that we just brush over. What your mom went through, and then your abuse as a 12-year-old.
Right.
And, we look at a crisis pregnancy sometimes, I should say we, but, some in the body of Christ look at a crisis pregnancy as the thing. But what has come up to that? What are the other traumas in families, in young women? Right. This is not an isolated thing. That's exactly it's just the most obvious.
That's right. It's the manifestation.
Yes.
It's the manifestation. And that really goes for everything. Even as a teacher working with students, when a student acts out, a lot of times I look at that child, most of the time I look at them and think, this is a manifestation of something that's deeper that's going on.
Right.
This is not just a child who's acting out.
Right.
This is coming out of a place of wounding. This is coming out of a place of rejection, or whatever the case may be. And so most of the time, the manifestation of the thing that we have to deal with is way deeper. And we need to get to the root of that pain to understand why we've gotten to this place.
Well, you are sitting here smiling. You've had more children. You have a family and a life.
Yes.
What happened from that point to get past that?
Right. And so Dylan was born a beautiful, healthy baby. Even though they say teen pregnancies, they're going to have tiny babies, and he was almost 9 pounds, super healthy. And
as an OBGYN, I know what it's like to deliver a 9-pound baby.
9-pound baby at 15 years old.
Wow.
Like, okay, that's traumatic. But so after that, me and his father decided to stay together. I wish I could just tell you that we immediately fell in love with the Lord and everything became daisies and roses, but it didn't.
Right.
We got married very young. I was 17. He was 19 years old. We were both involved in things we shouldn't have been. And I can only say this, that my parents never gave up on me. Mm-hmm. They unconditionally loved me through every single moment of it. They chased after me the way the Father chases after us with his unconditional love.
Yes.
And so through their chasing after me, I found myself in the back of a little church. Mm. And there was a little tent revival happening. And the only reason I even went was because I thought, I'm going to go and kind of make fun of and heckle these crazy Christians.
Yeah.
You know, because I had seen hypocrisy in the church. My perpetrator from years before was actually a pastor in a church. So I had this thought and idea in my mind that church is a place for religion and rules, but it is not a place where good people are.
Right.
So here I was in the back of this church, and the only thing I can tell you is that the presence of God fell in that place in such a way, it affected me in such a way that all I knew was I wanted Jesus. I didn't want to say a magical prayer or fill out a card or, whatever, join a dream team.
Right.
I just wanted Jesus. And so that night I crawled to that altar and I said, whatever that looks like, that's what I want, Jesus. Surrendered my life to him, was baptized in the Holy Spirit, completely transformed my life that night. I was still married to my husband, though. Brought the news home to him, and he said, "Good on for you." And so that was difficult. Being married as a believer to an unbeliever was a difficult path.
You're young. You have a toddler.
Yes. Had another baby by the time I was 19. Things were still kind of tumultuous in our marriage. Had my third child. Got pregnant with my third child by the time I was 21. Mm. Because I was so young, also switched OB-GYNs in the middle of my pregnancy. We didn't do any genetic testing. There were some things that didn't look quite normal in ultrasound, but because I was young, they were kind of just brushed off.
Sure.
And as soon as I gave birth to her, before they cut the cord, I knew she has Down syndrome.
Wow. And at giving birth at 21 as an OBGYN, you wouldn't have been low risk.
No, very
There would have been
nothing in the family. There was no reasons to think that. And as soon as she was born, I knew. There is a grieving period that you go through. I will tell you that because it's a loss and a sense of expectation.
Right.
But I will tell you, since then, what I've learned, and within just the first couple of months, I think in some ways where we've gone with our medical technology,
right.
Beautiful, amazing, wonderful things, but also some things that can rob us from some of the things that the Lord intended for us. Mm-hmm. The expectations that are no longer there because we know everything ahead of time.
Right.
The hard decisions that we're faced with that he never meant for us to be faced with. And I am so thankful that I wasn't faced with that. I'm so thankful that as soon as she was born, that love that you have for any typical child was there. That immediate protection, that immediate give me my baby and nobody touch my baby, that every mother feels was there. And I remember she was 4 months old and I was holding her. And, people's responses had varied. Some people were like, I'm so sorry, which, of course, as a mother, you never want to hear I'm so sorry because you want to say, just celebrate my child. To, of course, the doctor that I had at the time, the OB-GYN, I'm so thankful for her. We're still friends. Beautiful. She's retired now, which I'm so sad about. But she looked at me and said, she will be the joy of your life.
Oh,
we need more doctors like that are speaking truth into women's lives. And at 4 months old, I'm holding her. And I was crying because I was thinking about her future and I was worrying about how the world would treat her and what she would go through. And I literally started praying, Lord, I need you to restore my joy. Please restore my joy. And immediately I opened my eyes and I looked down at her and it was as clear as day, as if the Lord said, you are holding your joy. Mm. And let me tell you, she is 15, almost 16. She has been nothing but joy in our lives. One of the things I absolutely love to do is when someone has a confirmed diagnosis, which, it's never 100% confirmed.
Right.
So that's the other thing I want people to know. Sometimes there are false diagnoses.
Correct.
But to get to go talk to that mom and bring my daughter with her and say, listen, it's not as scary as you think it's going to be. It is a fantastic ride. Are there some hard challenges? Yes, but there are hard challenges with typical children as well.
Right.
She cracks us up every day. She is reading and she is writing, and she can have a conversation with you that will have you rolling and tears because you're laughing so hard. And she is just nothing. She's nothing but a blessing. And there's no way to really convey that except to say how much each mother loves their typical children. It's not different for a child who has any kind of special needs. And now being in that community, your eyes are open to there's a whole community of people that exist with these children who are a little bit different. And every single one of them will look at you and say, I wouldn't change it for the world. I wouldn't change it. And I've had people say, what if there was a treatment for Down syndrome? I thought, dear God, there's no way. This is part of what makes her who she is.
Wow.
It would be like taking away part of somebody's personality and saying if there was a cure for that or whatever. There's no way. It's part of what makes her who she is.
Talk to me a little bit about what life is like with her. You've talked about the laughter, that she can read and write and whatever, but just share a little bit of what life is like.
Sure. So, it's funny, at home we forget that she has Down syndrome. I don't think about it until we go into the public and, somebody takes a second glance or somebody comes up to you and says, oh, aren't they the sweetest? And I'm like, oh yeah, she has Down syndrome. I have to remind myself. And they are the sweetest, but you know what? They're also rotten in their own ways too. She will talk back. She will do all the things that a typical child would do. But she goes to Leander High School here in Leander, and she's doing great. She's got a whole classroom of kids. The great thing is too, she's been with these same kids since 6th grade. She loves them. They're very close. She's in Special Olympics. So she does multiple events in Special Olympics. Right now it's basketball. So we will be at Texas State University for her tournament.
Oh, wow.
This Saturday, in fact. And so, it's with every kid, you're on a ride with that kid because every kid is individual. We all have our dreams and our hopes for our children.
Right.
But your children are not the same. My oldest child is different than my middle child is different than my third child. So with her, it's just that life bends to accommodate whatever that kiddo's loves and dreams and hopes are.
Many of our listeners are probably connected with someone going through those kinds of challenges. Hopefully there is a young woman listening who is having to decide about life and that this is an encouragement to her. But more of our listeners may be that mother whose daughter is facing that pregnancy, maybe a church friend, an aunt, a teacher, a pastor, something like that. What would you have hoped, or what was said to you at the time that was helpful, or what might you have wished someone had said or done to support you at those times in a helpful way?
The mind is a very powerful thing, and I think that we allow fear to take our minds to places that don't even exist.
Yes.
We allow our fantasies to dictate kind of our emotions.
Yes.
Anxiety and all of those things we worry about. And I don't know what the statistics are, but what is it, 80% or something of that? It never even happened, right?
Yes.
And so that's the same thing with having a child who has any kind of special needs. Fear can come in and create all of these fantasies and anxieties about things that you will actually never even go through. And so what helped me the most were people who saw her as a human being.
Yes.
With the same desires as everybody else. She desires friends and she desires love and she loves being the center of attention like all children do. And so when another mom just came up to me and just said, like they would to any mom, oh my goodness, your daughter's beautiful. Oh my goodness, you're doing great. And encourage me just as a mom in general.
Mom to mom, just person to person.
Mom to mom. I think one of the worst things is when people feel sorry for you because that's not what I needed. I didn't need empathy and sympathy. No, I needed celebration.
Yes.
I needed moms to come alongside of me and celebrate her and celebrate all the things that she would do and all the accomplishments that she was going to make. And so I think really just having that attitude, remain positive, just like you would with any mom. That really was what got me through, especially in those early days when people came to visit.
Right.
There was almost, you could tell people would walk in, some would have this kind of somber, like they were at a funeral, and I'm like, look at her, she's beautiful.
This is my baby.
You know, celebrate her. And when the ones who would come in, I mean, I remember people walking in with balloons and presents, and they were so happy, and they would just grab her and pinch her cheeks, just like you would any other kiddo. And in fact, to be honest with you, she was the easiest of all three of my babies. She slept through the night the day she was born. In fact, when she was 4 months old, I remember taking her to the doctor and saying, I don't know if something's wrong with her vocal cords, but she never cries. Like, she's never upset. She was like, you're bringing her to me because your baby doesn't cry. You know, and so, in fact, it really was, I don't know if it was the Lord's grace or what it was, but it truly, when I think back, even on those early years, they were a beautiful time. It was a wonderful time. And the last thing that I wanted was somebody to feel sorry for me.
Yeah. Well, we are in a political turmoil around some of these things. And let's just kind of pull back. Yeah. And from your perspective, as a mom who had a child at 15, had a child with special needs, and now you've watched these children grow up, and you hear all this, the vitriol that is said, frankly, on both sides of the life debate. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, you know, I think that in this culture we are reactionary. We want immediate results on things. A lot of times we don't take into the long-term implications of things. We want quick answers and fix it right now. And there is a mindset that abortion will fix the problem. But, you know, walking with my mom through what she's walked through, and all of this is now a beautiful part of her testimony. She's walked through amazing healing and able to speak into other people's lives. I've seen that abortion itself has its own consequences that it carries. Right. There is no quick fix. Whatever decision you make, you will live with that choice and the consequences that come with it. And so, you know, gosh, I just wish that there was a way for me to look at these young moms and say, is your road going to be a little bit difficult? It might be a little bit difficult, but I promise you, when you look into that kiddo's eyes in 18, 19, 20 years, and you see the person that they've become, and you see the things that they've accomplished, and the relationship that you have with that child, you will have no regrets. And that is what I am so thankful that my parents that stood so firmly on the choice of life. I can look at my son, who is 21, an amazing young man, gorgeous, knock dead gorgeous, and yes, he's available, amazing young man. Look at him and say, I have no regrets.
Yes.
It was a difficult path, yes, but life itself is difficult.
For everybody.
You know, and I think, honestly, you know, abortion is one of those things where we feel like we can close our eyes, maybe be put to sleep and it's done. But if people's eyes were truly open to what abortion entails, the taking of another life, the dismemberment of a body, if they truly understood the graphicness of it, if they truly had to sit and watch what it is that they are about to inflict on their own child, you know, and it's not to bring shame on anybody. It's really not. Right. It's to help prevent, hopefully, somebody who's thinking of that, if you really understood the graphicness of it,
and
would
you said
continue with it?
Exactly. And you said a minute ago, having an abortion does not solve your problem.
It doesn't. No, it really doesn't. You know, my mother-in-law is an OB-GYN, and and I need to tell you, my husband did come to know the Lord.
Yes, we must make that clear.
I need to put that out there. He did come to know the Lord, and by the grace of God, we've been married for 20 years. And so, you know, it can work.
Yes.
But by God's grace. But, you know, watching, for a while I managed her practice, and you would see women who would come in and have multiple abortions. more times than not, it were those women who would be on antidepressants. More times than not, you would see that they were the ones who were struggling with the anxiety. I don't know what the relation is. I would love to do a study on that to see what the relation is between the long-term depression that people who go through abortion and how that's related. But it's just something I think that God's created us to create. That's what He's created us to do. When we take that creation and we destroy it before we ever see what God intended for it, there's always going to be a loss that's there.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And thanks for being so transparent and so encouraging, Elisha. I know that your story has already blessed so many, and I know it's blessing our listeners. Thank you abundantly
Thanks
for this.
having me. I appreciate it so much.
I was so inspired by Elisha's story, and I'm sure you are too. If you are a young woman struggling with a crisis, unwanted, or difficult pregnancy, if you are a friend, a parent, a pastor, a counselor who is working with a woman struggling with these kinds of choices, I know Elisha would be happy to connect with you. She has told her story in many places for encouraging others. Elisha is just like you, just a normal woman, a wife and a mother who has been through stuff, who's experienced what it's like to make the choice for life instead of abortion, and embracing the challenges that come from that, but also the joy. You can certainly leave me a message and we'll be happy to connect you with Elisha if you like. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family. It means so much that you come and listen to these episodes. I'd love to hear from you. You can leave me a confidential message at drcarolministries.com on our contact or podcast page. I read everyone personally and I'll get back to you. Thank you again, and God bless you.